My name is Alexandria Spurgeon and I'm reporting from the Educational Department at ASU. Today we are going to be talking about field-based learning. What is field-based learning? It is a promising educational strategy that is sweeping the globe. Field-based learning is learning that gets children outside of the classroom, making educational connections in the real world. For more on the benefits of field-based learning and how it can make deeper connections in assessment than pencil and paper ever could, let's talk to Dr. Farinelli. Dr. Farinelli?
Helping your community or working in groups, things, tribal values like Gadugi, which is we work together, or the Takwe Miyasin, all my relations of the Lakota people. Those kinds of values sometimes are difficult to show on an individual test score. But the person is really learning the value of that culture that is so tribal or group oriented, helping your neighbor, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Dr. Farinelli. So, Dr. Farinelli supports field-based learning. Let's talk to an actual elementary teacher and how field-based learning has affected her and her classroom.
I have been using field-based learning for the past 3 years. Me and my students love it. I have seen so much more engagement from my students. My role in FBL is one that is very hands-on. First, I have to make sure I choose and create an authentic learning environment that aligns with my curriculum. Next, I must plan authentic learning tasks that tie back to my state standards or school's curriculum. Lastly, I need to create assessment opportunities that allow me to track students' learning throughout the FBL process. Having a solid plan and management skills is the key to FBL's success.
Thank you. So teachers and educational professionals love field-based learning. But what about the students, who should be the center of instruction? Let's hear from Jake to see what he has to say about field-based learning. Does he love it?
I love using field-based learning in the classroom. One time we got to go to our town's local park and collect samples of the water and look for microorganisms. It was so cool. Our teacher says our role in FBL is to follow the behavioral and academic expectations she gave us before our FBL learning took place. We also need to make connections in the field to our classroom learning and vice versa. Lastly, we need to complete authentic assessments such as learning logs, student interviews, and field research. I love learning outside of the classroom. It's much more exciting than papers and tests.
Thank you, Jake. Well, it sounds like students and teachers love field-based learning. Isn't it a win-win? Well, there are some obstacles that field-based learning entails, and I feel like as a reporter I should give you these obstacles and let you decide if you want to use field-based learning in your classroom. There's more obstacles than just the teacher having to manage the classroom more and plan more lessons. And there's more obstacles for the students than just having to do more critical thinking and meet their teacher's expectations. One of the biggest issues with field-based learning is budget. There is a large budget issue in the educational system, and there's just simply not money for teachers to be able to pick their field that they want their students to do their learning in, and them to be able to travel to that often during the semester. Transportation is expensive, and many schools and students themselves cannot afford the money it takes to do this learning. There's another obstacle of classroom management. There's a lot of liability issues in bringing students outside of the classroom. So as teachers, you have to be on top of your game to avoid problems that might occur from the lack of a controlled environment in field-based learning. Lastly, the biggest obstacles besides budget and safety issues are just the small obstacles that you don't really think of, such as transportation, weather, students' fears of being outside the classroom, working with organic materials, or doing something they're not comfortable with. as well as student allergies and parental concerns. Overall, there's a lot of obstacles to field-based learning. It doesn't sound easy, and that's because it's not. So, is field-based learning even worth it? Well, let's talk to two educators who are going to debate this fact for us.
A lot of disadvantages to field-based learning. I just don't see it working. It is expensive, overwhelming for students, requires more supervision I don't have, and it requires good classroom management. It's a complete liability.
I have to disagree. Because there are so many educational benefits for my students, I am going to make FBL work. Students will be more engaged, learning will be more authentic, and my curriculum will come to life. To me, that is worth a shot.
Thank you. Okay, so we've heard from teachers and students and educational professionals, but we need to know the research that backs up field-based learning. So what is the research? Well, field-based learning has been around since 1911 with field trips and field work and field experience, something we as Athens State education majors know all too well. But there's little research actually done on the term field-based learning. So I had to do some deep digging and investigating to figure out if field-based learning was effective. And I found that there's lots of examples of field-based learning, but it just does not go by that new term that kind of encapsulates all these different types of learning strategies. A lot of the time it is called environmental learning, where students are outside the class learning things in their environment. There's a lot of research done on this particular subject in the UK. One article that I read called The Value of Outdoor Learning from the UK showed lots of promising results. One study it did compared students from a school that does lots of environmental or field-based learning to a school that follows a more traditional style. Students in the school that did field-based learning scored higher on 72% of assessments. Now that's real results. Okay, we've talked about the research. Now I want to talk about my personal views of field-based learning. I think that field-based learning is an extremely effective and fun classroom strategy. In Athens, we have learned about cooperative learning. We learned what it was. We learned that cooperative learning is when students work together to achieve a task. We also learned that cooperative learning aims to teach students 21st century skills. These skills include being able to communicate, being able to have critical thinking skills, and perseverance. Also, research has backed up cooperative learning like crazy. You can search cooperative learning and pages show positive impact as long as you use effective practices. And to me, I think that field-based learning is an excellent example of cooperative learning and one that I would really like to integrate into my classroom. Not only do I think that, but research itself backs it up. And field-based learning is just a great way to get students engaged and excited about learning again. And I'm just really excited about the possibilities that it brings up to educators like me in the future. Well, thank you all for listening to this investigative report. I look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night. Thank you again. This has been Alexandria Spurgeon from Athens State University News. Have a nice night.